Yeah, it is another episode of the Autumn Windbags. RJ Clifford, Juan Soto. Let's have some fun today. Bonus show, emergency show.
Easy
One
for
that
you
we
to say.
kind of predicted to have. No giant shocker here. Adam Schefter was the guy with the news. Antonio Pierce fired as head coach of the Las Vegas Raiders. The Raiders have now gone from John Gruden, who resigned in 2021, to Josh McDaniels, who was fired in 2023, to firing Pierce in 2025. It'll be yet the fourth head coach for the Las Vegas Raiders since they made the move to Sin City. We kind of thought this was coming. Soto, we were both wrong on when. You thought it would be, Sunday night or Monday. I thought it would be first thing we'd wake up to it this morning. He lasted all the way to around lunchtime on Tuesday, by some kind of miracle.
It's kind of status quo for what Mark Davis does. It was like let's get the guys together and let's make a good decision and let's hear the voices type of thing.
Yeah.
Um, I really do think this was something that was thought about being done for quite some time. But it's like, why get rid of them with 2 games left, 3 games
Yeah,
left in the
10
season?
game losing streak. You're thinking about it.
Yeah,
What I
let's
mean?
why what are we going to prove now? Like we don't see anyone on the roster right now that we were going to want to see as a head coach. It's hard. Like let's say for example they were to let him go after the 10 game losing streak, right? We're what 2-12, right? Let's just say, and you get PG in there for a couple of games. So he's got like a skeleton of a roster. You can't really give him a fair shot to show what he can do as a head coach during that time. It's just it was always the right choice to let him finish out the season, have that powwow to figure it out, and then just like you said, I was saying the other day on the post game show, finding the guy and realizing the guy you have isn't the guy are just as important. You don't want to waste any time if you don't see what you want to see, and this is what I think we've been talking about for a long time now. It's not about wins and losses. I don't want to hear any of these excuses about this guy got hurt, that guy got hurt. He had Getsy, he had Minshew, he had this. It's not about wins and losses. I don't think it was ever about wins and losses for Mark Davis. It was about getting better, about
Mhm.
progressing, about being a good head coach in this division. And all three of the teams have a quarterback and a head coach with a lot of experience, either Super Bowls or they've got to Super Bowls. And we're left holding the bag. Do you actually think keeping Antonio Pierce was? Do you think Antonio Pierce in a short period of time can get to that level of coaching? That's
Mhm.
what you have to ask yourself. And I don't think any of us, even the staunchest AP backers, are going to say that they saw the progression arc for him being there.
So there's a lot to unpack. We'll get to Gardner Minshew and Getsy because I think that does fall on AP because he made those decisions, right? Like he was part of hiring Getsy. He decided to go with Gardner Minshew. So that's not bad luck for AP. That he was part of that decision making process. Um, this goes to show you, like with Robert Kraft and the Patriots firing Mayo, like by the second that the scoreboard said triple zeros, he was fired. They're like, let's go, let's get Vrabel, let's make this happen. You can tell Robert Kraft is a decision maker, the guy, the czar of football. He goes. Mark Davis, and this is kind of why I thought he would last until Tuesday, was because Mark Davis takes his time. He wants to call Tom Brady and call former players, call his consiglieres, waiting until, he has his appetizers at PF Chang's. And, he's not a dictator in a good or bad sense. He's very much like, I don't know what decision to make. Let me ask everybody. So, AP lasted through Black Monday, didn't make it till Tuesday. I don't think this 2-day difference is going to hurt us as far as finding the next
It
head
doesn't,
coach.
not at all.
But it's just a matter. It's just a good window into how Mark Davis operates.
Yeah, and if you guys don't know this by now, this is him. This is what he's done the entire time. When he always has his group of influence around him, and I think you know having the exit interviews with the players and coaches on Monday, and then having a meeting with probably Tom Brady and Seymour and all those other guys that are up there to get in there and talk about it, all the information they've gathered, and then to make the decision. The difference I see is that the people in New England, like one of their major influences, and don't make no mistake about it, you're going to see it reported everywhere.
Mhm.
Tom Brady's going to have his hands all over everything. Okay, he's going to be like an 18-year-old cocktail waitress at the bar. Like, he's going to have his hands all over it. This is going to be the first of a lot of big decisions, and like I was telling you and Roy earlier today, there's a lot, right? There's now, it's for sure head coach and full coaching staff, because you don't know about PG, probably not going to be back. And then you have all those free agents on defense. There's you got 27 total free agents. Who's going to be the quarterback, running back, offensive line? There's so many. Who are you going to draft in the first 4 rounds? Who you can realistically, lean on as starters. Everything after that's just kind of like depth guys, for now at least. But I don't think we necessarily have to hit home runs with every single one of those decisions. I think we can not have home runs with some of those decisions and still be vastly improved next season. But we can't whiff on any of these decisions, because our margin is still very thin, because of the amount of, especially on the defensive side of the ball, the amount of free agents that we have.
I know you can't say the whole time, so I want to make sure I get your take on a bunch of things. The feeling right now is drastically different than the feeling October 31st, 2023, when Josh McDaniels was fired. When Josh McDaniels was fired, we were celebrating. We were shooting fireworks. We're like, we couldn't wait to go live that night. We're like, fuck this guy. I'm so glad he's out of there. This is a celebration. Let's move on. This is more like sober. It's like Antonio Pierce did his best. Yeah, like Antonio Pierce did his best, right? Like he gave his effort, did everything he could. He did what he thought was best. Players loved him. Fans, I liked him as a guy. I liked him as a personality. I enjoyed him. We both supported him when he got fired, or when he got hired. It's a different feeling now than it was a year and a half ago, because with Josh McDaniels, it was like he was smug. He dragged Aiden O'Connell into his like petty beef with Derek Carr. He like put the blame on everybody. He's like, well, just my way or the highway. He got rid of good players like John Simpson and others because they didn't like kiss the ring right. Like that was a feeling, was like, fuck you, Josh McDaniels. I hope the door hits you on the way out. With Antonio Pierce, it's like, thank you for your service. You did the best you could. This clearly isn't going to work out. It's like the difference between, getting like dumping a girlfriend who was like super abusive and shitty versus breaking up with a girlfriend where it's like, our schedules don't line up. You want kids, I don't. You want to live on the East Coast, I want to live on the West Coast. Love you. It's just not going to work.
Yeah, Josh McDaniel was like the stray dog that keeps attacking your pets. Like, if you kill that, you kill that dog. All right, let's celebrate, right?
Yeah.
And Antonio Pierce was our family pet that we had to put down. It was the right decision to make, and we made it. And no one's celebrating, but we knew that it had to be done. And there's a lot of people here that are like, well, it's the same old thing over and over again. And well, not necessarily, because we have the same GM. And that's big, because the overall arcing view of where the Raiders are going, it's still the same, because that guy, that 3 to 5 year guy, is still the same guy.
Mm-hmm.
The coach is going to be different. Maybe some of the, peripheral decisions are going to be different, but the overall arcing plan is still in place because our GM is still there. The GM, more so than anything, the decision maker on personnel, that was changing those guys multiple times. That hurt us more than the coaching being changed. It's because you get sweeping changes with the roster, and it's a lot easier to come back with when you have a lot of more continuity on the roster than if you're just getting brand new everything.
Yeah, in a micro sense, it feels like the same thing again. Just firing and hiring another head coach after a season and a half, like through a tiny lens, it feels like it's kind of the same thing. But if you, in a macro view, you can see the changes, like you mentioned, Tom Telesco, the specter of Tom Brady, the like air of the potential of Tom Brady to finally have somebody in that building that's not a yes man to Mark Davis, that knows football, that has sway with very, very important people, that can, with an iron fist, with unilateral power, push the franchise in a direction. We don't know if he's going to be good at it. We don't know if he's going to be push it in a correct direction, but at least he can get all oars steering in the right direction, as opposed to a bunch of yes men around Mark Davis that are just trying to get theirs. Tom Brady's an owner. Like, he can't be fired, so he doesn't need to suck up to Mark Davis. And so, like, between those two things, it doesn't feel quite like the same old Raiders, because I don't think Mark Davis is going to be fiddle fucking around making the big decisions. I think it's going to be more Tom Brady. Again, like I've said 100 times, if Brady wants to, he will make those decisions.
So I used to work for this kind of like mom and pop operation, right? And it was like just like kind of like no, a catering like delivery thing where we would deliver a lot of like the trays and the warmers and all that stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's the owner of the company, Big Bob, right? Big Bob, and then there's Little Bob, which is the son. Son was actually like 4 inches taller and like 80 pounds heavier, but anyway, he was Little Bob. And Big Bob said, "Hey, starting this specific job, Little Bob is taking over. I'm being phased out." And when we had questions, we're just so used to looking at Big Bob for an answer, and he would cross his hands and he would look at Little Bob, and he wouldn't say a word.
Mm-hmm.
And even if he didn't agree with what Little Bob said, he didn't say a word.
Yeah.
And that's what Mark Davis is going to do with Tom Brady. He trusts Tom Brady's decision making and his expertise and his connections and his knowledge and his winning pedigree, and he has to. He understands that he doesn't know what he's doing, right? He said that before. And he understands that he needs to put people in place that do know what they're doing, because he's out of his element right now. And it's not all, look, the window in the NFL, it closes quick, but it also opens quick too.
Mm-hmm.
We can figure this out, and we have a lot of things going for us. We have a lot of cap space. We have a lot of people, a lot of young players on our team who are have a lot of experience, and we have a lot of players coming back from injury. We have a superstar on offense, and I would say a superstar number two, as number twos go in the league. I think Jacoby Myers is as good as you can get as a number two option out there. He does everything, not just because of his catching and over 1,000 yards, whatever. He blocks, he runs great routes, he doesn't drop the ball. This guy does everything for you. Throws passes, throws touchdowns. Like, he does everything you can ask for. He's a great teammate. What we need to focus on right now is, what's the next decision? What's the next thing to kind of like roll down? Is it Vrabel? Is it Ben Johnson? Is it a lesser known name like a Liam Cohen, who's getting offers for interviews, who's the coordinator out of Tampa? Look at Tampa's offensive numbers. They're putting up big numbers with Baker Mayfield and a lot of receivers that are out. So there was a lot of reasons why this team maybe wouldn't perform. Some offensive linemen who retired in their prime. So he's another name out there, and there's John Gruden is kicking around.
Mike Evans got to 1,000 yards missing like 4 games. Like, he got the most out of Baker,
number
who was
two,
written
number
off.
three receivers, number 2, number 3 receivers gone. His number 2 tight end, who they used a lot, gone. 2 of his offensive linemen, one of them retired last year, another one was left in free agency. So it's like a lot of pieces were not there. They went with a rookie running back who they ended up freaking God. I wanted Bucky too, but out of Oregon. But he's over there doing big things. But a lot of things went wrong for Tampa Bay this year as well, and they still put up big numbers, and that's why Liam Cohen is getting a lot of look as a head coach.
So again on Antonio Pierce, what he did well, what he did poorly. I will give him credit for keeping the players motivated. That is something. That is not nothing, right? That was like the one thing he could hang his hat on, that players played hard for him despite us being out of the playoff situation by like Halloween, like early November. We were basically out of it. And when everyone on that team is just like, all right, 10-game losing streak, and we still managed to win 2 meaningless games, but it showed that those players still played hard. So that was something. You talked about how, well, what do we want to see out of Antonio Pierce? Like when he was hired, we're like, okay, this is what he does well. I'm going to assume he's not good at game management and some other parts of being a head coach because he's never shown it and it doesn't just happen. Certain people can, 1 in a billion will be able to just pick up all the nuances of being a head coach. Not only did he not improve on the things that we hoped he would improve on, but the things that made us believe in him, other than inspiring his players, he didn't do well. Last in turnover margin, average in penalties. There were like all these things. You're like, when he took over the defense, it was the number one. When he took over, it was the number one defense in football. Like there was all these things that when he started as an interim, you're like, wow, these are tangible, real improvements that the Raiders made under Antonio Pierce. We just decided like, oh yeah, that's what he is. He's going to carry that over. You know what I mean? We were optimistic that like, well, he showed it for 9 games as an interim. That means that's who he is as a head coach forever. And it wasn't. So not only did we thought, okay, game management, being the CEO, running a practice, putting together a staff, there's going to be a learning curve on that. But at least he does all these other things really, really well. And hopefully that'll overcome what he lacks in experience until he develops experience. Not only did I would say he did develop as a coach, but very, very minimal. Not only did he not advance fast enough, he didn't do the original good things that got him the job in the first place. So it was a double whammy, and that's why he's now unemployed.
Yeah, I was saying that the things that AP did well coming in stayed consistent. He was a good motivator. He was able to connect with players. No one's taking that away from him. And I talked about the video I did before the season started. There was a lot of fluke things that happened, that all happened at the same time, that all worked together. One of the best stretches by a punter in NFL history. One of the best stretches by a field goal kicker in NFL history. One of the best offenses on third down in an opponent's territory. They were like the best in the league. They were 100% touchdowns in the red zone. The turnover margin, the points per game, all these things weren't sustainable, and he needed to progress a lot quicker. There's a couple of things that really stood out to me in his press conference when asked some things that he should do different, or he would have done different, and he said he wished he would have trusted his gut more. And when probed a little bit on that, he said, "What the quarterback position?" Which tells me he wasn't completely sold on starting Gardner Minshew right away, or he wanted to go to Aiden O'Connell quicker once he saw a lot of the turnovers happening with Gardner Minshew. Ultimately, that's his responsibility. That's his decision to make. And if he gets another head coaching job in the future, maybe he won't have 19 guys in his ear telling him what he should do. Maybe he should, because I know that you're the same way. If you're going to go down, you want to go down on your principle. You don't want to go down on the word of somebody else, or on the advice of somebody else, or on someone else's plan. You want to do your own thing, and if it works, great. And if it doesn't, well, you know what? I did it to myself. And this is the bitter pill that Antonio Pierce has to swallow, because from hearing him talk in that press conference, he didn't do what he wanted to do. He let himself be swayed to just show an air of I don't know, like that he was easy to work with or compatible with other coaches or whatever. But ultimately, the best coaches have that ability to work with other coaches, but they know the strength of their word, and if they feel strongly about something, they need to say it right then and there. And it showed on the field. A lot of the decisions that he made, to I don't know how many times he didn't challenge something when he should have.
Mhm.
And I mean, I did the numbers. It was something ridiculous. In the 2 minute after the 2 minute warning of the first half and before the end of the game, so the last 2 minutes of the half and the game, okay, we were outscored something ridiculous like 70-40. That is directly a result of bad time management, clock management, and game time decisions. 2 minute drills, 2 minute decisions. That's all coaching. That comes down to the end. And even
And
in
how many
other
of those
sports
40
too.
points were just garbage time points at
Yeah,
the end of the
and
game?
most of those points, honestly, were like there was like 4 touchdowns that were like garbage time touchdowns that didn't mean anything. The game was out of reach. We scored one this last game against the Chargers.
Mhm.
So, I mean, if I were to just do the numbers in the end of the first half, it would probably be even worse. The issue is, like, even in basketball, they say that coaches win tight games in the last 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Coaching wins that. Same thing. You're putting your team in bad positions by not making good decisions in crunch time when the decisions need to be made quickly. And there just wasn't the improvement that needed to be there. And if he had followed his gut a little bit more, because I don't know if he was this bad last season. I think he was maybe a little bit better with decision making last year. He was a little bit more concise, a little bit more like definitive, but he just seemed like he just was too many people in his ear, and it just never.
And when you're a CEO head coach, that's like exponentially more important. You're good at that because you're not bringing anything else to the table. If you're like an offensive coordinator, if you're an offensive minded coach and you're the head coach and you have a great offense and maybe some game management stuff is an issue, you're like, okay, that's not good, but at least you're bringing this great offense to the table, right? Or defense. It wasn't even a special teams coordinator, right? When you're just a CEO, and it can work. There are a lot of good CEO head coaches, successful Super Bowl winning head coaches that weren't offensive or defensive geniuses. They just ran an organization well and won. When all you have is the CEO head coach, hiring your staff, deciding who starts, game management, clock management, timeout management, throwing the red flag when you want to replay, like when that's all you do, when there's like all these jobs a head coach can have, right? When all you do is this, you better crush it. You better be amazing because you're not doing a lot of other jobs the head coach can have. So not only was he limited what he can do, he didn't do it well. So it was just a double whammy for
him. And the not doing it well is one thing. That's fine. He's a new coach. He hasn't had a lot of head coaching experience at any level. But there needs to be improvement, some marked improvement that you can hang your hat on. Like, hey, man, he's getting better. But that just wasn't there. It just wasn't. And I think that more so than anything else really was his undoing.
Yeah.
All right, man. I got to dip.
You got to go. See you, Soto. All right. I'll stick around. A couple more things on Antonio Pierce.